What's going on, guys? It is the Coaster Battleman here, bringing you an awesome countdown. My top 30 roller coasters I've ever ridden. Late December 2018 edition, part 1, number 30 through number 16. Let's get started. Number 30 is American Thunder, and American Thunder is a great GCI wooden coaster at Six Flags St. Louis, and I have been a big fan of this coaster. It's pretty intense, has some decent airtime, depending on if you get stapled or not, but it's a really good coaster. I enjoy it. It's smooth, it's fun, and it's the number 2 coaster at Six Flags St. Louis, and I really do enjoy it. Number 29 is V2 Vertical Velocity, and V2 Vertical Velocity is at my home park, Six Flags Great America, and it's an infinite impulse coaster, and I'm a big fan of these models, and I really overlooked this coaster in the past, as I ranked it lower than the Demon, which was kind of weird, but now I think it's the 3rd best coaster at Six Flags Great America, and it is a very fun coaster. The launches are intense. I really like the twisted spike, and the vertical spike is also very good as well. It has that very big drop if you're in the back, and if you're in the front, you'll get lots of twisting on the other vertical spike with the twist. And overall, V2 is a very fun intimate impulse coaster, and it's just overall a very fun ride. Number 28 is Rougarou, and this will provide some controversy for a lot of people in the comments, but Rougarou, I think it's a good coaster, especially if you're in the back seat on this coaster. You need to be back row in a middle seat. So the reason why I say that is because the middle seats are the smoothest on Rougarou, and on the drop on Rougarou, I actually got some pretty good airtime. I'm not lying, I actually got some pretty strong airtime on the drop, and that was phenomenal. The inversions are solid. You have some pretty interesting turns throughout the ride as well. This is a fun being on Florida's coaster, and I don't know why people say this is a bad ride yet when I think it's a good ride. It's kind of weird. I think it's a good coaster at Cedar Point. Really good ride, really fun. Edging it out is Mystic Timbers at Kings Island, and this thing is an intense coaster from start to finish. You have the intense first drop followed by several bank turns and airtime hills, and though the airtime hills may not give that much airtime, like I said with American Thunder, I don't know why it is with the GCI trains they can't really get that much airtime, but this coaster provides a very intense experience and a smooth one as well. It's really fun. It's still a fairly new coaster, and it's one of the better coasters at Kings Island. It's their number 4 in my opinion, and I really do enjoy it. It's a super fun ride. And the shed, I mean, it's a letdown, but it can be pretty intense for first-time riders, so Mystic Timbers, really good coaster. Edging it out is Wicked Twister at number 26, and this is the Intimate Impulse coaster at Cedar Point, and I know there are rumors of it being removed or relocated, but Wicked Twister is a very fun coaster. It has very strong launches along with crazy wicked twists, like the name says, Wicked Twister. The twists are very intense and they're very fun, and these Intimate Impulse coasters are just very fun. And I've heard some people say this thing gives you head banging. I mean, it might, but I still think this is a very fun coaster nevertheless. It's mostly smooth, and it's just a great experience. And at Cedar Point, this is one of the shortest lines you can get, and I always tend to ride this a few times when I go to Cedar Point. It's a really fun ride. Edging it out is a coaster that hasn't been in my top 30 or top 25 really ever, and it's Magnum XL 200, and this coaster has grown on me over the years. I have ridden it at Cedar Point, and in 2016 I thought, it was alright, it was solid, but when I rode it around Halloween time, I loved it. 2017, I loved it. 2018, I loved it even more, and this coaster just seems to keep growing on me. The triangle hills are very fun, the drop is pretty decent as well. It's not the smoothest coaster in the world, it is one of the roughest coasters on this list, but I still think it's a very fun coaster. The airtime is pretty strong, and I mean, that bow tie roll is kind of the worst part of the ride, but other than that, the airtime on this thing is very fun, and this thing is just a powerhouse of ejector hills and triangles, and you get a really good view of the lake and the water park and the whole resort with the hotel breakers, so Magna XL 200 definitely has a lot of pros on its side. Edging it out at number 24 is Superman Ride of Steel, and this is, for a coaster experience, I think is a bit better because it has some very nice floater airtime hills and it's a bit smoother. And for me, Superman Ride of Steel, it's an awesome front row coaster for me. Back row, I mean, it's a bit rougher, while front row is super smooth. You have some really good airtime hills on it, as well as these long double helixes, which I thought they were pretty enjoyable moments. I thought they were decent. And then these long straight sections, the straight track, which a lot of people complain about that with Superman Ride of Steel, but I thought it was really fun. I really enjoyed the straight sections. You were just flying through the wind at a very fast speed straight, which kind of feels like on the expressway. It's a pretty interesting part of the ride, and the airtime on this is just really good, like I said. This is a very fun coaster and by far the best coaster at Six Flags America. Number 23 is Steelhog at Indiana Beach, and you might be wondering why this is so high on the list. It's just because this ride is just so fun. The hang time is phenomenal on this. The two inversions provide all the hang time in the world, and they're super fun. This coaster isn't the most intense or the tallest or the fastest or any of that, but this is just a fun ride I really enjoy. It's really smooth, has some wonky turns as well, and this may not be an airtime machine, but this is just such a fun coaster, and it's all about the hang time you get, and that Beyond Vertical Drop is also really good. So, Steelhog, very fun ride. Number 22 is Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast, and I am combining Six Flags Over Texas and Six Flags St. Louis's for this because they're very similar. There are just a few minor differences, like the queue lines are a bit different, but that doesn't change the fact that these are both very good rides. You have the awesome backwards launch, and I've noticed with the Six Flags St. Louis version, it's not as intense as Six Flags Over Texas is, but St. Louis's is a bit smoother than Six Flags Over Texas's version. Plus, I prefer the color scheme on Six Flags St. Louis's new Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast rather than Over Texas's, but despite the changes, both these are very fun rides, and I really do enjoy Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast. That backwards launch is worth the ride, and that inverted top hat is really good. The vertical spike is good. It's fairly intense, and overall, it's a really good coaster. Coasters, I should say, because there's two of them. Number 21 is Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure, and I haven't ridden this since 2016, but I know parts of it have been retracked recently, like in 2017, but when I rode it, I really enjoyed it. This thing has some crazy airtime hills, and it's one of my favorite wooden coasters out there. Like, this ride just packs a punch. Tons of monster hills throughout the first half. The second half, not as much, but it still provides some decent airtime. And you have a pretty nice final helix at the end. This is basically a wooden hypercoaster. It's not 200 feet in the air, but it feels like a hypercoaster just because of the massive structure it is. And Shivering Timbers, overall, if I ever go back to Michigan's Adventure, I'm going to try and get back on Shivering Timbers a bunch of times, because that's like the main thing there. And I think it's a really good ride. Number 20 is Griffin at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and this is a very fun coaster. I rode it 3 times in 2014 and another 3 times in 2018. And all 6 times I've ridden it twice in each row. All 6 times were just awesome. That drop, you're just hanging there for 5 seconds. It actually feels like you're hanging there because on Valraven, you're slowly moving. Like, the lift hill is slowly moving you before you drop. But Griffin, you're just frozen in the air, waiting for the drop to start. And then, boom, you're dropping down, going 70 miles an hour. And then you got the two Immelmans, and you have the water splashdown. Griffin is just a super fun dive coaster. I really enjoy it. It's just a great experience. And overall, I don't know why people say this is not that good of a coaster, because I really enjoy it. It's super fun. Number 19 is Dominator at King's Dominion, and this is the B&M Floorless coaster there, the only B&M there, and it's just a fun coaster. The inversions are really good. It has by far my favorite Cobra roll, and it's easily the smoothest Cobra roll I've ridden on. The vertical loop is very fun. The second half is also pretty solid, but that first half is just amazing. The first drop is phenomenal, and you have a pretty good start to the ride. As you go out the station, you have a bit of a small drop and a few little turns. And overall, Dominator, it's a long ride, and it's just an all-around great ride for me. So this next coaster may come as a super huge surprise. I know for me this is a big surprise to be on here, and this is by far the roughest coaster on this list, but this is just such a fun ride. It's Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas, and this thing is just intense, and it is an airtime machine. The back row on this ride is just so intense. The drop, it's like standing airtime. Like, I've never gotten any more airtime. I've gotten more airtime on this ride than any other coaster on the top 30, and this thing is just so intense. The inversions are so powerful. Those vertical loops, fantastic. And you have some crazy turns and airtime hills after the two vertical loops for the second half of the ride. And this coaster, it isn't the longest coaster in the world. I mean, it is a fairly long ride, but it is shorter compared to the average coaster on this list. And overall, I think it's a very intense but very fun coaster. The intensity, the huge, crazy intensity, does provide a bit of roughness, though, to this. That's kind of the only drawback to this coaster, but the airtime is so intense and you're so high out of your seat, it's well worth it, despite the roughness. Next on the list is a coaster I've been riding for years. It's Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America, and this has been an icon there since 1999, and it's still a great coaster. It has a very fun drop, several bank turns throughout the ride, and some solid airtime moments as well. This isn't a crazy B&M hypercoaster that I would say that is the elite 10 out of 10, but I still love this coaster. It's very smooth, and for what it is, I think it's a great ride. And finally, number 16, we have Goliath, another Six Flags Great America coaster, and this is by far the best coaster in the park. I mean, Max Force is coming next year. That'll probably make this list for sure, hopefully. But Goliath is the top dog there, and it's easy to see why. The drop is very fun, and you'll get some crazy airtime on it in the back row. RMCs, this is an amazing back row coaster. You'll get some crazy ejector airtime throughout the ride. The inversions are fun. The only drawback to this is that it's so short. I wish this coaster was longer, but that is all for this video, guys. That is my top 30 roller coasters I've ever ridden, part 1. Hopefully you guys gave it a like, and I hope you enjoyed, so thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, stay tuned for more videos, and to the near future, stay tuned for part 2.